This is the Authority Partners podcast.
Welcome to Authority Partners podcast on artificial intelligence software. I would like to present you our guest, Dino Esposito.
Oh, I'm happy to be here.
So I would now like to move to Angular and JavaScript frameworks in general, So what is your take on that? And if you compare it with some other frameworks seems to be moving and growing like faster than Angular right now, like Vue or React. I think React already surpassed Angular in the user base. So what do you think in general about the Angular? Because right now we are at this point where everybody seems to be doing Angular. It seems to be like a central point or central framework for doing web development.
Okay, Angular is, like REST, one of those buzzwords that for reasons even hard for me to explain in detail never conquered my heart. When I think of Angular, in my mind triggers a connection with Smile at that test-driven development. So they couldn't be, probably farther from each other if you take those two technologies as standalone technologies. But in my mind, the connection is made by the experience I had over a decade ago, which a very large company of the time, now disappeared, called me to make a presentation to management because within this company, the top management, the CTO, decided to push TDD throughout the entire development of the over thousands of developers they had. So they wanted to bring to the top management, the top technical management, the tech leaders of the entire company. They wanted to have to bring the word of renowned industry experts, trying to justify the use of TDD. And now, I've never been a huge fan of TDD, and I take the responsibility for this, but it's just me. But anyway, I do recognize that in a large enterprise scenario, you need to give rules to everyone writing code. And TDD, so write the test before you write any single piece of code, or try to do that on a regular basis. So teach yourself, change your mindset so that you first think of any code that can break what code you are going to write. That is probably, it's not maybe not perfect, but it's probably the best or the least problematic approach in a large enterprise scenario to force the writing.
It's a matter of discipline, I would say. Yeah.
Now, Angular, same thing. It's not perfect, but probably in a large enterprise scenario is one of the best thing you can do. Why? Because it forces you to some extent to play by the rules, by the strict rules that a company and a community of people, and again, Google is in this group, as a relevant presence in this group, decided that are the way to go. This said, what is that Angular is really doing? Building, in some way, the HTML that the browser has to render. That's all it does. So any Angular application, but the same can be said for React, for any sort of framework. It's all about taking data from some remote endpoint and use that with some local template layout information and produce a string of text that the browser can render nicely and in a colorful way to users. That's it. That's all it does. It's about doing string concatenation. I'm destroying Angular. I'm reducing Angular to string concatenation, but that's exactly all it does at the very, very end of the day. So now, which other ways we have to concatenate strings to produce HTML? And then again, the history of Angular says that, because in the beginning, Angular was AngularJS, And AngularJS was essentially a client-side data binding library, like Knockout.js, for example, and like Backbones, whatever. So those libraries at some point started growing bigger and bigger because people developers realized that, okay, I have here this very nice client-side data binding. If I have endpoints that provide me JSON or XML data, and with this client-side data binding, I can arrange everything. So my application can, in a way, run entirely on the client, can become a single-page application. And, oh, yes, single-page application. And what about routing? What about authentication? What about this? What about that? So a number of ancillary topics beyond the core of client-side data binding appeared. And the community had to find solutions. So AngularJS was totally rewritten at some point, and they changed everything. They switched from JavaScript to TypeScript.
But in my opinion,
and they built an ecosystem.
Yes.
And they coined a new language, and required a new mindset for developers, which is exactly the thing that now many people find problematic, and they're looking for something slightly simpler like React, or even simpler like Vue.js.
Yeah, two questions about that. First one is, or more a statement. First one is that I think that they actually give a framework around something that people were already crafting by hand in jQuery in the very beginning. So kind of they built a framework around it and then improved it later on. But the thing that I have experienced is that, from the purely technical point or engineering point, I would say, I mean, in the end, we have to provide a value to a customer. That's the whole point of all this exercise. If you really get good in Angular, and there's a really a steep learning curve, you really need to invest a lot of time to learn Angular. You have no idea about, I don't know, React or something else. If you would to change a company, for instance, and then you get to a company that is doing React solely, you are beginner again. So there is no any correlation between Vue, React, Angular, and other frameworks. This kind of sucks, in my opinion.
Absolutely, and yeah, absolutely. My everyday experience is with a team that develops any sort of user interface using Angular, and the Angular top guys are, they are a restricted group of people. They talk only to each other. They go to lunch together. They live their own life.
They are like a Angular gang, yeah.
Yeah, it's a gang, exactly. So they live on their own. They live in a sort of a cave, and they understand each other.
They do not communicate with us ordinary people.
They communicate with API, but they don't communicate naturally as human beings. Yes, exactly. And because they are forced by the rule of the framework itself to reason in a strict way. On the other hand, I have some other experience with a completely different scenario, which it's not an enterprise development, so it's a very small number of developers, but extremely smart. And we still do jQuery and with a little bit of Vue.js, okay? And that's all we do. And we manage, they're an entire industry, okay, that runs specifically professional sports, one particular sport, that the entire backend, the entire back office runs on those applications whose UI is extremely interactive, and it's essentially built using jQuery and a little bit of Vue.js here and there. So it's possible, but to be possible, it means that every individual developer must be able to craft elegantly, effectively, every single little piece of JS and decide where to put it, where to abstract it. So it's very carved. It's a delicate kind of work, but nothing that is really absurdly complex and sophisticated. You must be very careful about what you do, but it's something you can teach easily to any junior developer. And to make your point, when you leave such a company with this background, you can easily grab Angular, you can easily grab React, you can easily keep on using lower level frameworks, JS frameworks like the same jQuery or maybe Vue.js or anything else that may appear in the future, even though I hope that JavaScript will die sometime soon, possibly. But anyway, yes, it's your point is good. If you're an Angular developer, you're only that. And the moment you move to another company that doesn't value Angular as a skill, you're a beginner again. Yes, it's absolutely true.
That's kind of down-putting, yeah. But okay, so this kind of naturally leads us to the topic of Blazor. Blazor seems to be something that a lot of us really hope to kind of unify the building of the software without using JavaScript. Like a web development, like without using JavaScript at all, so that we can use the languages that are strongly typed, fully developed language that we are really proficient in, and then we can produce a code that can be compiled right now and utilized by WebAssembly, and then again right now at this moment in the JavaScript engine, but in the future it's not going to be like that. Browsers should natively support it in the future standards. So what do you think Blazor is? I mean, does it really have that significance and that weight so that it can really turn the industry down, and that it can provide us like a seamless platform to craft the web applications in the future?
Okay, let me start with a couple of anecdotes. So one is when I think I was one of the first guys to write something about Blazor maybe 2 years ago on MSDN magazine, and you know, I don't know if you are familiar with how things used to work for authors on MSDN magazine. You were totally free. At least that was my case, to choose the topic and then to write the article. And then the article was reviewed by Microsoft experts. Most of the time, people pick it up for the task where program managers or people anyway, developers, lead developers on the specific technology that you were writing about. So I had a couple of guys from the Blazor team to review my first couple of articles. And in the first one in particular, I was making, maybe in the conclusions or in the beginning at some point, I was making the bold statement that this is a Silverlight done properly. And they politely asked me to drop the sentence, not because that was false, it was a false statement, but because they felt, the use of the term Silverlight, which has some sort of a negative connotation, a negative reputation in the industry, could damage this new emerging technology. But off records,
so they are very careful about it, and how they want to promote it, and they are sticking by it, right? Yeah,
and they say, okay, off records, yes, you can look at Blazor has a new, completely different from a technological point of view implementation of the same idea that brought us a decade ago to produce Silverlight. Now, this is the first one. The second thing, the second statement, which I never put down in an article, but I mentioned on records and off records in a few conferences in more recent times, was that Blazor is the potential killer of Angular. And again, this is off record, so this is not an official statement, but yes, but it's exactly the right way of looking at that. It simply means that Blazor has the potential to kill Angular. Not sure. No, nobody can really say this will happen and when this is going to happen. But there is the potential to kill, to dismount entirely the values that are today making Angular effective, at least or especially in an enterprise scenario. But again, Blazor in itself is not even the key point. I would go farther than this, and I would touch on WebAssembly. That's the real new thing. And that's the primary and huge difference that marks a neat difference between what brought Silverlight to fail. The same idea 10 years ago, implemented with the technology of 10 years ago, failed. Today, because of WebAssembly new infrastructure, the same idea could be successful.
That's a very good point. So WebAssembly is definitely a central point that we should focus on. So do you also feel, I mean, I do feel that, I just want to hear your opinion. Microsoft is pushing Blazor, which is fine, but I like to hear that they are sticking by it and they are going to support it. But I also believe that the only way it succeeds is that if a larger community accepts it. So I mean, okay, right now, what I was doing, I would take C++ or I would use Rust and then compile through Mscripton and then use it in a WebAssembly to draw on the browser canvas, stuff like that. But it wasn't a nice experience. It was really challenging. Now I feel as if the broader community should come up with their own implementations that you can use languages like like C++ or Python or Java or whatever to actually write the code, anything that you feel comfortable with, and you write the code, and then it compiles everything, pushes it to the WebAssembly, and then it can natively run in the browser, we expect that standards are going to follow and be in compliance with, and they will improve. So I believe that we need that like a higher, like broader community support in order for all this to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, WebAssembly is the real point, much more than Blazor as a framework for building web interfaces.
Microsoft way of doing it.
Yeah, exactly. It's the Microsoft. Let's call it the Microsoft Angular. Okay.
Yes.
So that's Blazor, but the real point is what lies underneath Blazor, because Blazor works because the profile of the .NET framework has been compiled in some way using Mscripton or whatever it is to WebAssembly. So any Blazor application at the moment just downloads this WebAssembly compiled version of this small .NET Core framework, and then the regular assemblies of your C# application are run on top of that within the browser. Now, the funny thing, the good thing about Blazor is that it mixes together user interface and backend code. So you can have your application logic that runs on the client side. You need to run on the client side. You have that one written in C#, including any just application logic, so interaction between the user interface elements and some little pieces of business logic you really want to run on the client. And then you use endpoints, gRPC, or plain REST-like endpoints, wherever you have them, to get fresh data from a server environment. And in Blazor you have the ASP.NET friendly Razor Super HTML that allows you to define the UI using web technologies, and you have C# as the glue that connects together the dots of the user interface. And I mean, for my little applications, toy applications done with Blazor so far, you never feel the need of having JavaScript around. Okay, there is the possibility for Blazor to interop with JavaScript, but you never feel the need, at least, except it's really for these days. I mean, I guess that in a year things will change radically, at least for those pieces of user interface for which you don't have a C# or a Blazor enabled component, and then you find much easier to rely on jQuery plugins of any sort for Bootstrap based select boxes or maybe Angular style edit boxes and things like that. The key point is WebAssembly. In looking ahead, that's it. And as you said, the future that can be foreseen is a future in which you use whatever language that has an environment, as a build environment against the WebAssembly, that allows you to do whatever from user interface to backend code, and then all that you have is an executable that can be hosted and run within the browser. That's it.
So thank you. I definitely bet on WebAssembly. I think that it's.
And by the way, you know that the next big deadline is November 2020, when Microsoft announced they will release .NET 5. And I expect that with .NET 5 we will have the possibility of having .NET 5 C# code or native code to be also compilable to WebAssembly.
This is an amazingly easy way of creating SPA applications. Of course, it's kind of it's server side. You don't have that beauty of like everything refreshes automatically, even though you can hack it. But it kind of it produces everything on the server side, and then it pushes it through Signal R to the client side. So you get the experience as everything is going on like on only on a client side. But another note, which is just the last note, that you mentioned the superset of actually HTML, or actually the Razor pages. I mean, it's really funny. Razor pages, it's like, okay, it looks super, it's cool, but it's actually the very same idea that we had like 22 years ago, when I remember, as it was yesterday, they started to mix like that HTML with the code and VB script.
Okay.
It was in a VB script. I mean, they used it extensively. So nothing major has changed. They have just improved it well over 2 decades. I mean, it's really funny. So, but anyways, I would like to conclude this podcast. Thank you very much for joining us for this Authority Partners podcast on building architect in intelligent software. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Authority Partners podcast. Stay tuned for the next episode.